Kael'Var never believed in fate. He believed in contracts, firepower, and surviving long enough to spend the credits. That's why when the Mercenary Guild offered him a premium escort mission on a distant world, he didn't ask many questions. The job, protect an alien princess. The location, planet Zephyra glowing. Mysterious world at the edge of galactic civilization. The payout, enough to buy his way out of the war machine forever. Zephyra wasn't like any world he had seen. Its sky was lavender at dawn, dark blue at dusk, and silver-streaked at midnight. Mountains hummed with energy. Trees shimmered with bioluminescent veins. But it wasn't the planet that unsettled him, it was its silence. A stillness hung over Lysara, the capital city. Like the air before a lightning storm, Kael arrived at the palace a week before the scheduled extraction. Instead of a fortress, he found a museum of crystal spires, flowing silk banners, and open courtyards. The palace guards wore ornamental armor and ceremonial blades, not one plasma cannon in sight. He scanned the horizon constantly. The horizon stared back, quiet and a clean dot, and then he met her. Princess Aristel descended the grand staircase with the poise of someone who didn't fear bullets. Her presence bent the space around her. She was ethereal, glowing skin, moonlight hair, and those eyes. They weren't innocent. They weren't curious. They were ancient, as if she lived 100 lives and carried their weight behind her. Calm stare. You're not what I expected, she said. Kael almost laughed. You either. In another life, they might have hated each other. A human warhound and an alien princess bound to prophecy. But the look in her eyes told him something else. She knew danger was coming. She had already seen the fall of her world in dreams, in visions, or in blood on stone. He didn't know it yet. But this wasn't just a contract. This was destiny creeping in, dressed like a paycheck. And Zephyra would burn before it let them go. It happened on the 5th day. Kael had just finished recalibrating his plasma rifle when the air shifted. Not a breeze. Not a sound, a shift. Birds stopped chirping, wind still. Even the humming crystal trees fell silent, as if the entire planet held its breath. Then the palace shields flickered, once, twice, and then they failed. A scream tore across the sky, an unholy wail of descending engines cloaked in fire. The horizon ignited with streaks of red and violet. From the east, the clouds opened like a wound, and something monstrous emerged. The warships of the Dravox Horde. Jagged, living metal beasts that looked more like predators than machines. They swarmed like locusts, their wings dripping with iron fire. The Zephyrian guards panicked. Their elegant blades and golden armor were no match for what fell from the sky. The Dravox didn't march. They hunted. Arrows of molten plasma whistled through the air, turning soldiers into smoke. Explosions tore through crystal towers like they were made of sand. Kael didn't hesitate. He grabbed the princess by the arm. Move, he barked. Aristel looked stunned but not afraid. I saw this, she whispered, in the star waters. This is the day the kingdom dies. We're rewriting that prophecy, Kael growled. They ran. Down marbled halls, through golden gates, past statues of long-dead kings. All around them, chaos raged, servants screaming, guards falling, walls collapsing. Kael shot to Dravox. Scouts mid-flight. Their bodies shimmered out of existence before hitting the floor. Extraction points in the West Garden. He shouted. No, Aristel said. We have to reach the heart. The what now? The Heartstone, the source of our planet's shielding. If they claim it, Zephyra won't just fall. It will be erased from time. Kael cursed under his breath. He had one job. Get her out alive. Now he was being dragged into defending ancient artifacts that probably glowed and hummed when you touched them. This wasn't part of the deal. But he turned toward the heart anyway, because the sky was on fire, and somehow this alien princess made him believe they could still save something, even if it cost him everything. It happened on the 5th day. Kael had just finished recalibrating his plasma rifle when the air shifted. Not a breeze, not a sound, a shift. Birds stopped chirping, wind still. Even the humming crystal trees fell silent, as if the entire planet held its breath. Then the palace shields flickered, once, twice, and then they failed. A scream tore across the sky, an unholy wail of descending engines cloaked in fire. The horizon ignited with streaks of red and violet. From the east, the clouds opened like a wound, and something monstrous emerged. The warships of the Dravox Horde. Jagged, living metal beasts that looked more like predators than machines. They swarmed like locusts, their wings dripping with iron fire. The Zephyrian guards panicked. Their elegant blades and golden armor were no match for what fell from the sky. The Dravox didn't march. They hunted. Arrows of molten plasma whistled through the air, turning soldiers into smoke. Explosions tore through crystal towers like they were made of sand. Kale didn't hesitate. He grabbed the princess by the arm. Move, he barked. Aristel looked stunned but not afraid. I saw this, she whispered, in the star waters. This is the day the kingdom dies. We're rewriting that prophecy, Kale growled. They ran. Down marbled halls, through golden gates, past statues of long-dead kings. All around them, chaos raged, servants screaming, guards falling, walls collapsing. Kale shot to Dravox. Scouts mid-flight. Their bodies shimmered out of existence before hitting the floor. Extraction points in the West Garden. He shouted. No, Aristel said. We have to reach the heart. The what now? The Heartstone, the source of our planet's shielding. If they claim it, Zephyra won't just fall. It will be erased from time. Kale cursed under his breath. He had one job, get her out alive. Now he was being dragged into defending ancient artifacts that probably glowed and hummed when you touched them. This wasn't part of the deal. But he turned toward the heart anyway, because the sky was on fire, and somehow this alien princess made him believe they could still save something, even if it cost him everything. The Garden of Light had once been a sanctuary. Kale had walked through it 2 days earlier, marveling at the way bioluminescent flowers bloomed in perfect rhythm. With the music played by the palace's water harps, the leaves shimmered in colors he couldn't name. Alien birds sang lullabies in the trees. A soft, blue mist always hung in the air, making it feel like a dream carved from starlight. Now, that dream was soaked in blood. Corpses lay tangled in the glowing vines. Zephyrian guards, palace staff, even children. Their robes, once radiant, were now painted crimson. The marble pots were shattered, trees torn in half by plasma blasts. The Dravox had reached the garden first. Kale led Aristel through the carnage, his rifle raised, scanning every shadow. He moved like a predator, low, fast, calculating. Aristel followed close, her feet bare, her luminous gown trailing through ash and gore. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply whispered prayers under her breath in a language older than stars. Then came the whistle, a faint, almost beautiful hum that sliced the air a second before impact. Kale's instinct screamed. He turned, eyes wide. 3 Dravox plasma arrows arced toward them in midair, glowing violet, deadly, perfectly aimed for her. He didn't think. He moved. In one blurred second, he threw himself in front of her. The first arrow shattered on his shoulder plate, burning through armor and into flesh. The second struck low, embedding itself near his ribs. The third missed by inches. He roared in agony, fell to one knee, smoke rising from his wounds. But he didn't fall completely. Behind him, Aristel gasped, her hand reaching out, trembling. You took the arrows. Yeah. Kale coughed, spitting blood. That's what meat shields do. From the trees, Dravox hunters emerged, hulking, scaled beasts with glowing eyes and hooked claws. They didn't expect him to still be alive. That was their first mistake. Kale rose. He ripped the arrow from his ribcage and hurled it like a dagger into the first one's throat. Then he opened fire. One by one, they fell. He wouldn't let them take her. Not here. Not in this sacred place. Not while he still drew breath. They reached the Heartstone just before the second wave hit. The chamber lay deep beneath the garden, a sacred place carved into the roots of the palace itself. Kale's legs barely held beneath him, blood leaking from his wounds, breath heavy. His armor was half melted. His body trembled with pain. But when the crystal doors opened, and he saw what lay beyond, even he forgot to breathe. The heart of Zephyra wasn't a machine. It was a living entity, suspended in the air, a massive floating crystal pulse like a heartbeat. Radiant tendrils of energy spiraled through the chamber, wrapping around the walls like the roots of a divine tree. The light it emitted wasn't just visual, it was felt, warm, ancestral, pure. It thrummed inside Kale's chest and vibrated through his bones. This is what they want, he whispered hoarsely. Aristel nodded, stepping forward reverently. It is the soul of my world, the last living fragment of the Dawn Makers. Kale frowned. So, it's a giant space battery. She smiled gently. It's our memory, our history, our shield. If it falls, our past is erased, and no future can ever grow. Then the walls shook. The Dravox were coming. Kale leaned against a pillar, coughing up more blood. He barely had enough energy to hold his rifle, let alone fight again, and yet he knew he would, because standing behind him, her silver eyes burning like twin stars, was the last hope of an entire civilization. Aristelle approached the Heartstone and placed her palm against it. The chamber rippled with light. Symbols floated into the airglyphs. Older than any language Kale knew, her voice rose like a song, like a prayer, ancient and commanding. A barrier began to form at the chamber's entranced pure crystal light, sealing them inside. Kale turned toward the threshold just as the first Dravox slammed into it, screeching. The light held for now, but it was cracking. "You'll need to protect me while I finish the binding," Aristelle said softly. Kale nodded, lifting his rifle with bloodied hands. "Then you'd better hurry, Princess, because they brought friends." And with that, he took his place between her and the enemy once more. No cover, no backup, just a man standing in the path of death. Again, time fractured inside the Heartstone chamber. Seconds stretched into eternities as Kale stood alone at the mouth of the sanctum, the glowing energy barrier flickering with each Dravox impact. His fingers were numb, slick with blood. His vision, pulse black spots forming at the edges, but he wouldn't step back. Behind him, the princess chanted in the language of stars. Her voice had become something elemental, weaving with the pulse of the Heartstone, drawing out tendrils of light that coiled through the air like living spirits. The power was reshaping itself, but it needed time, precious seconds they didn't have. Outside, the Dravox had gathered. Kale saw them through the translucent barrier, dozens of them, armored like walking nightmares. Their faces were hidden beneath bone-like helms, eyes burning violet. They were ancient enemies of the Zephyrian bloodline, creatures born in void drifts, bred for annihilation. Then came the high-pitched whine, the energy bows being drawn again. Kale clenched his jaw, planting his boots in the bloodied marble. He whispered under his breath, "Come on." Then the shield cracked. And they poured in. The first three died quickly, his plasma rifle barking in short bursts, tearing through armor, sending bodies sprawling. But they kept coming. They moved like water, flowing around fallen brothers. One slashed at his side. Kale ducked, countered with his knife, buried it to the hilt. Another arrow tore through his left arm. He screamed, but kept firing. The chamber trembled. The Heartstone pulsed erratically. Aristelle knelt now, trembling under the energy she was channeling. Sweat dripped from her brow. Her fingers splayed against the air itself as if holding back the collapse of the entire realm. Kale fell to one knee. Blood pooled around him. His vision blurred. Then, through the haze, he saw one Dravox archer slip past the chaos, bow raised, aimed at her. "No." He roared and hurled himself toward her again. A fourth arrow struck him, square in the back. He collapsed to the floor, coughing, heart pounding, but the arrow never reached her. It clattered to the ground. At her feet, Kale smiled, eyes half-lidded. "Told you, meet shield." She turned toward him and began to cry. The chamber dimmed only for a moment, but in that silence, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Aristelle, trembling and breathless, stared at Kale's crumpled body. Blood leaked from his wounds in dark pools. His back was a mess of burned armor and exposed flesh. The fourth arrow had embedded deep too deep. He wasn't moving. "No," she whispered, crawling to him, voice cracking. "Not you. Not after everything." She cradled him, her glowing hands shaking as they tried to stop the bleeding. But Zephyrians didn't have the gift of human medicine. She had no med packs, no nanogle. All she had was light and a desperate heart. "I am sorry," she wept. "You should not have borne our scars." His eyes fluttered open just enough to see her face above him. "Don't cry, Princess," he rasped, voice weak. "You're too shiny for tears." Her lips trembled, but she nodded. The Heartstone responded. The great crystal pulsed once, twice, and then exploded with light. The glyphs in the air ignited into spinning runes. The tendrils of energy that once flowed gently now lashed like lightning. The air buzzed with raw celestial force. Aristelle looked up, startled. The power was no longer being drawn by her command. It was coming to her, willingly, rushing like a river into her very soul. Her hair lifted. Her eyes turned white. The glyph circled her like a halo. And then, the Heartstone spoke, not with words, but with meaning flashing memories into her mind. The founding of Zephyra, the original pact of the star blood, the legacy of protectors, and Kale's sacrifice. It had seen him, it had judged him, and it had chosen. Light surged from the crystal, enveloping Kale's body. Aristel gasped and pulled away as golden tendrils stitched his wounds closed. His shredded armor reformed. The embedded arrows were pushed out by growing skin. His chest rose again deep, steady. His eyes snapped open. "What the hell?" he murmured. "You were chosen," she whispered, awestruck. "The Heartstone accepted your blood." Kale looked around. The Dravox were backing away, fear etched into their monstrous faces. Then he stood, stronger, taller, something inhuman shining in his veins. He didn't know what he'd become, but the next time he picked up his rifle it glowed. Kale stood at the center of the glowing chamber, reborn. His wounds gone, his strength multiplied. But it wasn't just healing, it was more than muscle and adrenaline. The Heartstone had laced his soul with starlight, with the memory of Anne, ancient race, with the fury of 1,000 fallen guardians. He was still human, but now, something more hummed inside his blood. The rifle in his hands vibrated with unfamiliar power. Where once it fired plasma, now it roared with light teach-shot pure energy. Guided by thought and instinct, his armor had reshaped itself too. No longer standard military steel. It was now a hybrid of Zephyrian crystal and Terran alloy, glistening, reflective, nearly alive. He took one step forward, and the ground beneath him shimmered. The Dravox saw him. They had no words for what he had become. To them, he was a myth reborn, a nightmare dressed in radiance. But even so, they attacked. Kale met them head-on. The chamber erupted into war again, but this time, Kale wasn't defending. He was destroying. His movements were fluid, almost effortless. Each squeeze of the trigger sent arcs of golden energy, ripping through enemy ranks. Blasts of light exploded on impact, shattering bone and metal alike. He weaved between arrows like a ghost, faster than he had any right to be. When one Dravox tried to flank him, Kale spun and struck with his bare hand, crystal armor meeting scaled flesh in a crunch that echoed like thunder. Aristel watched from the center of the chamber, eyes wide with awe and something deeper. Reverence. Kale had become the embodiment of a forgotten prophecy, the guardian born from outside the bloodline, the protector who would stand where none others could. Dravox screamed in panic, some retreating, others fighting to the death. Kale gave them no mercy. "You wanted a piece of her," he snarled, striking down the last archer. "You came to her world with fire and arrows. Now you answer to me." He stood amidst the silence, chest rising slowly. Around him, the fallen Dravox lay still, their weapons cooling beside them. The Heartstone pulsed once. More calm, stable. It was done. The wrath had passed. The battle had ended. The bloodshed, the screams, the fire, they were memories now, echoing faintly in the stillness of the Heartstone chamber. But outside, the planet wept. Smoke curled through the fractured towers of Lasara. The Garden of Light lay in ruins. Entire wings of the palace had collapsed, and the sky still glowed with embers. Zephyra had survived, but only just. Kale stood at the threshold of the Heartstone sanctum, rifle slung across his back, silent. The power that surged through him had quieted, but it hadn't left. It lingered in his heartbeat, in his breath, in the way the walls of the chamber seemed to react to his presence. He wasn't just a protector now. He was part of Zephyra. Behind him, Aristel stepped forward, slow and graceful despite the devastation. Her luminous gown had been singed, her hair tangled by wind and ash, but she looked no less regal, no less eternal. Her eyes, those silver galaxies, were fixed on him. "You are more than what you were," she said softly. "You carry the essence of our ancestors now. You are written into the memory of this world." Kale looked down at his hands. They no longer trembled. "I didn't ask for that. No one ever asks to be chosen," she replied. "But the ones who don't chase glory are often the only ones worthy of it." He turned toward her. "What? Now the crown is broken," she whispered. "The council is dead. The people, they will need someone to rebuild with, someone to believe in." Kale raised an eyebrow. "You mean you?" She smiled. "I mean us." There was a silence then, not of awkwardness, but of understanding. Two souls from opposite ends of the galaxy, bound by war, pain, and something neither of them fully understood. "I bled for you," he said. "I cried for you," she replied. "I would again," he admitted. "I won't let you." She stepped forward and placed a silver circlet into his hands. It was ancient, etched with star iron, once worn by the first king of Zephyra, a crown and a question. And in her eyes, Kale saw not a princess, but a partner. Night had fallen over Zephyra, real night, not one marred by fire or falling arrows. For the first time in weeks, the skies were quiet, serene. The twin moons Sorel and Veil rose together, casting their silver glow across the palace ruins. They reflected in the rivers of crystal glass and shimmered upon broken towers, like blessings from forgotten gods. Kale stood at the edge of the royal terrace, overlooking the valley. Below, thousands of surviving Zephyrians had gathered, their pale forms flickering like candlelight against the dark. They sang in soft, harmonic tones, mourning the fallen, honoring the defenders, and welcoming the dawn of something new. Behind him, Aristel approached in ceremonial garb. Her gown was no longer torn. It flowed with living starlight, embroidered with constellations. Her crown rested lightly in her glowing hair, and in her eyes no longer merely royal burned the fire of a queen reborn. Kale turned when he heard her steps. He was still armored, though his weapons now lay untouched. He had bathed in light, bled in shadow, and returned transformed. The people called him the Flamebound, a symbol, a myth, a guardian of their future. But to Aristel, he was still just Kale, the stubborn, reckless human who stepped into death without flinching, the man who stood between her and oblivion. The people await your voice, she said. They don't need my voice, he replied, gazing at the crowd. They need yours. She stepped beside him, their shoulders brushing, and they need a protector. They have won. He looked at her. You. She didn't smile, not this time. Instead, she turned fully toward him and held out her hand. You don't understand. When you took the Heartstone's arrows, when you shielded me not once, but again and again, you didn't just protect the queen. You bound yourself to Zephyra. To me. Kale hesitated. Is this political? He asked carefully. It's sacred, she said. In Zephyrian tradition, to take a wound for the crown is to take its soul as your own. You wielded my clan's weapon. You spilled blood for me. You lived for me. Her fingers curled into his palm. You're already mine, if you'll have me, under the twin moons. Kale Varn bowed his head, not as a soldier, but as a man who had found something worth staying for. I do. The war was over. The ashes had settled. The arrows had stopped flying. But the scars Kale carried remained etched deep in muscle, in memory, in soul. Not all of them were visible. They honored him in ways he didn't expect. Songs were sung. Children carved his name into stones and trees. The elders called him Bloodrot Star. And in every celebration, every whisper of gratitude, every bowed head, they saw not just a soldier but a savior. He had never asked for that. All he had wanted was a paycheck, maybe a quiet ship to disappear into. But somehow, along the way, he had bled for more than credits. He had bled for a people who believed in something ancient. He had bled for a woman who believed in him. Aristel never left his side. In the days that followed, she rebuilt Zephyra not as a queen above her people, but beside them, with Kale always at her right, her protector, her equal, her anchor in the storm. There were moments, quiet ones, when she'd trace her fingers along the fading scars on his back and chest. Kale would always flinch, not from pain, but from memory, the arrows, the fire, the silence after. She would press her forehead to his and whisper, "You are not broken. You are chosen, in time." He believed her. They never held a traditional wedding. On Zephyra, things like that were written in spirit and sacrifice, not ceremony. His vow had already been spoken when he stepped into the path of death for her, again and again. Her vow was in the way she never let him face the night alone after. Together, they ruled the planet reborn. Together, they forged peace from the bones of war. And sometimes, when the stars were quiet and the moons hung low, Kale would run his fingers over the deepest scar on his side, the one just below his ribs, and smile faintly, because he knew that no matter how many times he had nearly died, no matter how much pain he endured, the reward was worth every scar.